Our first guest tonight says the sequester is a bad idea whose time has come, but even if it kicks in, the Western Hemisphere will not collapse. Joining us now, former director of the Congressional Budget Office, president of the American Action Forum, Douglas Holt-Eakin. Doug, good to have you with us. The president...
Thanks, Lou.
I think Speaker Boehner phrased it rather interestingly and elegantly. The president needs to clean up the mess he made. What do you think?
It's certainly a matter of the historical record that the president proposed this across-the-board method of cutting spending, and I think it's also a matter of the record that no one likes it. It was designed to be so bad that it wouldn't be used, but we aren't doing the alternative, which is to pick specific programs, especially the ones you mentioned, the Medicares, the Medicaids, the health care spending, cut those because those are the programs that are the problem. Since that's not happening, this is what's left, and increasingly you're hearing people say, well, then fine, this is what we'll do.
What we'll do is really lay off a lot of employees, according to the president. I mean, he runs the government, therefore these are his choices. To lay off 800,000 employees of the federal government because of a 2% change in federal spending, that is frankly nuts. I mean, that is just and unconscionable.
Well, there are a couple things about that. First, we're not going to lay off 800,000 people. There will be 800,000 people who will be affected by the sequester. Most of them will end up having to take some unpaid days off, maybe a day a week for a couple of months. That doesn't mean that the Pentagon will grind to a halt. The services will still be provided. Managers will juggle work schedules. That actually goes on all across America. The second aspect of that is the reason we get these kinds of irrational cuts is the Pentagon doesn't have the flexibility to move money from one place to another, and that's a congressional decision. They tie the hands of the Pentagon and other agencies and say, look, you can't move the money. Every account gets cut the same amount no matter what it is, whether it's personnel or going to conferences. So, you know, they've made this bed, now they're going to lie in it.
Well, they've made a bed and 800,000 federal employees will be lying in it, and as usual, the consequences really fall upon those who are not, who will are anything but an elected official in this government. This is not, it seems to me, an easy task for the president to try to deny recorded history, that this sequester is not his idea, that it didn't originate.
He's a skilled politician, Lou. That's what they do.
Well, you know, I do understand that, and I don't understand what has happened to the pink poodle lapdog press in this country that permits it, whether it's Democrat or Republican, the president or Congress. They're to be held accountable for malfeasance, misfeasance, and utter, just complete irrational behavior. This seems to be one of those historic examples.
Yeah, I mean, this is one where certainly his fingerprints are all over it. And now, I guess what really bothers me the most is there's a concerted effort to scare the American people to death. And as you said, I don't think Western Hemisphere will collapse if we have the sequester. This is $85 billion in a $3.6 trillion budget in a $16 trillion economy. And I'd be hard-pressed to explain how cutting $85 billion, think of it as taking, you know, $85 billion out of your allowance of $3,800, taking $85 out. That's not going to end things.
Percentages are perhaps the easiest way to comprehend this. 2%, most of us can understand. 2%, you know, is not that significant. But on the other hand, you know, it is easy to recall that rat poison is mostly oatmeal in most cases with 2% poison in it. 2% can be deadly and destructive, and in some cases, determinate.
Yes.
Are you saying? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I mean, absolutely, no one should argue this is a good idea. This is, as I was quoted, a bad idea whose time has come, because the worst idea is to not deal with the spending. That is the problem.
Yeah.
And, you know, at least they're agreeing that they're not going to do nothing. So it's either do real spending cuts that are real choices and really pass the Senate, which we haven't seen, pass the House, President signs, or this.
You know, at some point, and I know that you are doing your level best to try to bring rationality into the nation's capital.
It's not my fault, Lou.
Well, no, I understand, and I sincerely respect that. But on the other hand, if I may, one of the things that the Republicans and conservatives that have sort of stepped into is a trap, and that is that they continue to harp on the budget, what must be done, which is never done, and therefore they are being dismissed because they are the messengers of such an articulation. at some point, and this may be that point, isn't it time to let the president have the consequences that he orders up through his own initiative, in this case, the sequester? If you are correct, then he is going to have a political disaster on his hands that will not be of terrific pain to too many people, assuming that it is lightly touching the lives of 800,000 people. And therefore, the Republicans can move on to the idea that what is not required is comprehensive, immigration reform or gun control or tax reform. What is required is reforming the entire federal government and the way two parties mismanage it.
I think you're onto something. I mean, I think increasingly the House of Representatives in particular is recognizing that you cannot hold pieces of the government hostage and force the president to do the right thing. You cannot save President Obama from himself. He's elected. He's got control of the Senate.
Right.
They make their choices and then let the voters decide.
Terrific. Sounds like a constitutional republic to me. Douglas Holt-Eakin, good to have you with us.